every time they tried to figure out the how, they hit a wall. If you've ever tried to map out a move and kept hitting a wall, this one's for you. I'm Diane Hibbs. I'm a strategic real estate advisor serving buyers and sellers in Kingwood, Texas, and the whole Northeast Houston area. Before real estate, I spent 25 years as an OBGYN. And what that career reinforced for me is that people often come in knowing something isn't working, but not knowing what to ask for. They describe the symptom, and my job is to find the right diagnosis and treatment plan. And that's as true in real estate as it ever was in medicine. I had a conversation this week that is a perfect example of exactly that. A couple came to me ready to make a move. They'd been thinking about it for a while. He's about to retire, and she already has. They built their home back in 2012, so they've been there over a decade. They're moving to Nevada to be near their son. And they already have a small retirement town picked out. They know exactly where they want to land. They're ready. They are excited. They're anxious to get on with living their next chapter. But they couldn't figure out how to get there. Now, before I tell you about that part, I want to tell you about this house because it matters to the story. This home was designed around their dogs. 3 large dogs who are, without question, the babies of this family. There's a dedicated dog room. It has a dog shower, storage for all their toys, their leashes, their food, everything the dogs need in one place, built into the house on purpose. Now, leading out of that room is a hallway they tiled completely so the dogs couldn't scratch and chew on the walls and the baseboards. The doors have plexiglass protection over the bottom half, and where you might expect a traditional interior door, they installed iron doors, the kind you'd normally see on an exterior gate, so the dogs could see through to the next room, but they couldn't chew through to it. Now, this wasn't a house that happened to have dogs in it. This was a house built in partnership with those dogs. Okay, one of the dogs is elderly. He can't tolerate the car rides. He can't be crated. He's not going anywhere easily, and he shouldn't have to. Now, while her husband finishes out his last stretch of work, the wife is already preparing the house. She has a staging area set up in the now empty dining room. She's patching nail holes. She's touching up the paint, working through the small list of things every homeowner has when they're getting ready to sell. She's doing everything right. She's ready to move. They both are. But every time they tried to figure out the how, they hit a wall. Now, I want to stay here for a minute because I think this is where a lot of you are living right now. They weren't stuck because they hadn't thought about it. They had thought about it a lot. They'd run the scenarios. They'd talked it through between themselves. They knew what they wanted the outcome to look like. They just couldn't find the path from here to there that didn't fall apart somewhere in the middle. And here's the specific wall they kept hitting. They felt like they had to sell their house first. That felt like the only logical starting point. You need the money from the sale to buy the next place, so you sell first, right? Except that meant they needed somewhere to go while they searched for a home in Nevada. And searching for a home in another state while you're living out of a suitcase or staying with family or renting somewhere temporarily with 3 large dogs, including one who can't travel easily, that's its own kind of impossible. So they'd think it through to that point and stop. And then they'd pick it up again a few weeks later and get to the same place and stop again. They couldn't even get to the fun part, the finding the home in Nevada part, exploring the town they already loved, imagining what the next chapter actually looks like. They couldn't get there because the starting line felt blocked. And here's what I want you to hear. That feeling, that sense that you've thought it through from every angle and it still doesn't work, That is not a sign that the move isn't possible. That is almost always a sign that there's just a piece of information missing, a path that exists that nobody has shown you yet. For this couple, that path existed. They just didn't know about it yet. So I told them about something called a buy before you sell program. They had never heard of it. Most people haven't. And honestly, most agents don't bring it up. Here's how it works in plain language. Normally, if you need the proceeds from your home sale to buy your next home, you have to sell first, which puts you in a gap, a stressful, timing-dependent gap where everything has to line up perfectly or the whole thing falls apart. You're either negotiating a lease back so you can stay in your house temporarily after it closes, or you're moving twice, or you're staying with family and hoping it doesn't take too long, or you're just crossing your fingers that the timing on both sides works out the way you need it to. And it rarely does. A buy before you sell program removes that gap entirely. Now, the one I work with is through a company called HomeLight. And I want to be clear that I am the real estate advisor in this equation, not the lender. The financial details of how the program works for your specific situation are a conversation you will have with the lender directly. What I can tell you is how it functions in practice and what it makes possible for my clients. So here's the basic idea. HomeLight essentially unlocks the equity in your current home before it sells. And that allows you to go buy your next home first. You move once, you move on your timeline, and then your current home sells after you're already settled in the new place. You're not living in a gap. You're not racing a clock. You're not making decisions about the next home under pressure because you already sold the last one and now you have to find something fast. There are programs like this from several companies, and they each work a little differently. The specifics matter, and they're worth understanding and discussing with the lender before you decide if it's the right fit for your situation. But the core idea is the same across all of them. You buy first, you move once, then you sell. When I explained this to that couple, something shifted in the room. They said every time they thought they had a plan, they'd get to a step that wouldn't work, and they'd be back at square one. And sitting there in that conversation for the first time, they felt like they could actually make this happen, and sooner than they'd thought possible. Think about what this solved for them all at once. They can go find the right home in Nevada first, on their terms, without a clock running. They explore the town they already love. They take their time. They find the right fit. Then they move once with their dogs, including the elderly one who can't travel easily because they're moving directly from this house to the next one with no stops in between. And their home here sells without anyone living in it. There's no scrambling to load 3 large dogs into a car every time a buyer wants a showing. There's no disrupting the elderly one who can't handle it. The house shows clean and vacant and easy. And of course, we will stage it because that will help the sale. Now they'll downsize with the proceeds and have no mortgage in retirement. And that's exactly the outcome they were trying to build. This is what makes it possible. And they had no idea it existed until we talked. Now, I want to tell you about another family because I think their story makes the case for this program in a completely different way. This was a young family, 5 of them. They used a buy before you sell program too, and their experience shows you something important that the retiring couple's story doesn't. They found the perfect home for their family. We got everything lined up. Their current home went on the market and went under contract the very first weekend. They had done everything I told them to do to prepare the home, and it showed like a model home. The sales side was moving beautifully. And then something happened on the buy side, a hiccup that nobody saw coming and nobody could have planned for. And just like that, the closing on the new home got pushed by 6 weeks. 6 weeks with 3 kids and a house that was already under contract and on its way to closing. If they had been operating on a traditional timeline, trying to close both on the same day, or doing a lease back, or timing everything to line up perfectly, that 6-week delay would have been a crisis. They would have needed somewhere to go, somewhere to live with 3 children while they waited for the problem to resolve itself. That's a stressful, expensive, logistically complicated situation that nobody wants to be in. Because the program was in place, it was an inconvenience, not a crisis. They had the protection of a structure that could absorb the unexpected. The new home eventually closed 2 days before their sales side closed, and they moved from one home directly into the other without living anywhere in between. That is what a safety net looks like in practice. Not just a more convenient way to move, a structure that protects you when something goes wrong. And in real estate, that is always a very real possibility. It's normal. Plans change, timelines shift. The question isn't whether you'll hit a bump, it's whether you have a structure that can absorb it when you do, and an agent who knows how to handle it. I've also had a client who did it the traditional way, sold and bought on the same day, and they were holding their breath the entire way to closing. Everything lined up. It worked out beautifully, but that kind of timing requires everything to go right simultaneously, and there is very little room for the unexpected. There is more than one way to make a move work, but some ways give you a lot more breathing room than others. Now, here's what I want you to take from all of this. The feeling that your move is too complicated to start is almost never a sign that the move isn't possible. It is almost always a sign that there's a piece of information missing, a path that exists that nobody has shown you yet. That retiring couple wasn't doing anything wrong. That young family wasn't doing anything wrong. They were all smart, thoughtful. They were all people just trying to solve a complicated problem with incomplete information. One conversation changed everything for each of them. Not because I had magic answers, but because I knew which questions to ask, and I knew about tools and options they hadn't been told existed. That is what I do. And whatever your situation looks like, whether you're retiring and ready for the next chapter, or you have a house full of kids and can't imagine moving twice, or you're somewhere in between, the conversation is worth having before you decide the move is too complicated to start. I'm Diane Hibbs, Strategic Real Estate Advisor in the Northeast Houston area. And if something in your housing situation no longer fits, I'd want to have that conversation with you. No pressure in it. We'll just talk through where you are and what you're trying to accomplish and see if there's a path that makes sense. You can find me on my website, dianesellshtx.com, or just reach out to me directly. Thanks for watching. I hope something here made your next step feel a little clearer.